everyone. Welcome back to But Why Though Reviews. I am Kate, editor-in-chief of But Why Though, and the head over here for film, TV, and anime. And I'm here with Aaron.
Hello.
And CJ.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are reviewing Andor. So to get started, I won't start because I have a lot of love for Diego Luna as Cassian Andor. I want to hear what you all were thinking heading into Andor. If you had any reservations, any expectations, let's unpack that and start with Aaron.
I'm just excited that this has finally come out because I thought for the longest time this was just stuck in some sort of weird mid-pandemic thing where it just, because it got announced a while ago and we got a featurette, I think it was back in 2020, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And it just seemed to get stuck. So I can't believe it's actually finally here because I've really been excited for this one because I love Rogue One. I hold it in such high regard. So to have this like kind of prequel story kind of like attached to it, I've really been eagerly awaiting for it because Rogue One just delivered something very different to a lot of the Star Wars films. So I had a feeling that Andor would continue that trend. So I've been eagerly anticipating this one. I was nervous but excited. So yeah, I think that's where I sit.
CJ?
Yeah, I really dug Rogue One, and my one thing coming out was like, I want to know more about Cassian. What's his whole deal? And then this series got announced. I was like, cool, very cool. And that Tony Gilroy, who kind of was the writer on a lot of Rogue One and reshaped it into what we eventually got, is also the showrunner on this. So I'm just like, okay, we're going to have that same vibe. And it's really fun because we've seen the Rebellion before in like Clone Wars and Rebels and all that. But this is a new thing because like there's no Force users, no Jedi, no Sith. It's just spies and stuff. And that's something we haven't seen in Star Wars. So I was really hyped for that.
And for me, I think that Cassian Andor has been the character that I have seen myself in the most out of every character in Star Wars. And that's because of the very specific conversation he has with Jyn in Rogue One, where he does, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, but he scolds her for the ability to look away and points out that he hasn't had that ability. And I know that a lot of fans trace that back to his family being separatists, and having this longer history of complicating what a rebellion looks like. And so for me, I was always excited to go into Andor as a series because what I think a lot of people forget, if you're detached from knowing anybody who has come from a country or has family that comes from a country with that have been through civil wars, that have been through upheavals, it's not always cut and dry. It's not empire or rebel. A lot of it is just, how do you survive? And I was very happy to know that we were going to get to see that. And I wanted to know, like, what is Cassian, like, literally in the fight, like, being an active spy or an active agent from the beginning? Or was he a guy just literally trying to live under an oppressive system? Which brings us to the first 4 episodes of Andor. It's the latter. Like, he was just trying to make a living, just trying to, and I don't even want to say succeed, not even thrive, literally just survive. And I think that complicates the character in a way that doesn't undercut what he told Jyn, because just being able to survive in something, that is still fighting in a different way. And so that's kind of where I fall on it. Although I was worried that there was going to be less of an impact with him as a character because he's going to die. Like, the bookend is already written. We know where it ends. So I was worried that nothing would feel impactful. So I want to ask you guys, like, from Andor as a story so far, which the synopsis for this is, and the Andor series will explore a new perspective from the Star Wars galaxy, focusing on Cassian Andor's journey to discover the difference he can make. The series brings forward the tale of the burgeoning rebellion against the Empire and how people and planets become involved. It's an era filled with danger, deception, and intrigue where Cassian will embark on the path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. So how did you guys feel that it handled the emotion, and did you all feel like knowing his ending hurt that at all? And you can start with Aaron.
No, it was kind of like the Pulp Fiction of it all. Like, I was kind of just happy he was back and we got more time with him, in essence. You know, like that out of pace, out of sequence storytelling. It's kind of like, I'm just happy he's still there. So, and again, see it like you said, seeing that backstory and kind of where he came from, and I think the show did a really good job of kind of like interweaving how he was raised versus kind of where we find him with the current story as well. And Diego Luna's just such a good actor. He's just so compelling to watch. You can't help but like be drawn into it all. And I think overall, like the tone of the show just does a really good job of reinforcing everything about Cassian Andor and kind of like the rebellion's plight and kind of like where it's all working towards. So I think it does nothing but strengthen the overall plot. Like immediately after watching those first 4 episodes, I just felt this absolute urge to go back and watch Rogue One. And I think a lot of people are going to have those same feelings of that interconnection.
Yeah,
CJ?
most definitely. I feel about Andor the same way I feel about Kenobi. Like with that, you knew Obi-Wan was going to die, but it dug more into how Obi-Wan, handled Anakin's death and the fall of the Jedi and stuff. And here you see how Cassian's life is under the thumb of the Empire and why he would say, screw these guys, I'm going to fight them. So yeah, I really think it deepens more. And like Aaron said, Diego Luna is an absolutely phenomenal actor. Like he gives so much layers to this character. You're just like, okay, I really dig this guy and I really want to follow him. And also how the series is progressed. It's in a way that it's slowly building up that conflict, but it doesn't feel slow. You're just engaged in it. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I really echo what you all say, especially about like Diego like being such a good actor. Like he's a small man. Like he's not like, it's really easy to command a scene and to call all presence to you when you take up a lot of space, and that's not Diego Luna. Like okay, like I think a good example is Jimmy Schmitz as Bail Organa. Like he's just a large man walking in and it's like, oh, all eyes here. But I think what Diego Luna has is his voice, and there's a certain there's a certain like tenor to his voice and a certain way that he projects that kind of just commands everything like towards him. And I think that is something that keeps everything really grounded. And I think that it makes this, I don't know what you all think, but I actually think this show is way more mature than anything we have seen in Star Wars. And I would even argue the MCU. Like, I think that this, like, Andor is Disney paying off on some of the promises to do more mature content. And I think that a lot of that is driven by Diego's ability and the other class as well. I think the other cast as well. I think Fiona Shaw does a phenomenal job as Marva, but like when they talk, they're not just talking. Like there are layers to.
It's not like a wicked, like 2-dimensional dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. I think very clearly the conversation that he has with Vix, who's his ex-wife, right?
I still struggle to. I think I
past romantic connection, possibly wife. And I think that I think she's a good example of how other characters play off of him as well, because she's just as forceful, and the way they like kind of butt up against each other. I think it kind of really sets the tone for how Andor views everybody in his life. And I think that we have gotten protagonists in Star Wars that are either completely closed off or really easy to, I guess, easy to love. And I think that Cassian is one of those characters where it's like, oh no, if I love you, I'm going to give you like a lot. Like, I'm not going to put my filter on. I'm going to push you. I'm going to argue with you, but that actually means that I care. And I think that that is something that's really interesting for me, for him. What about you guys? Were there anything in these first 4 episodes that you think stand out as kind of fleshing out Cassian as a character?
I think just seeing kind of the world around him, like you feel the weight of the oppression, like you feel the thumb of the Empire pressing down on the people, and you can just sense it in everyone that's talking, and there's just this kind of like deep burning rage, but they're, you know, it's they've got a control, but they're all just kind of like disgruntled, like it's just hard to deal with it. But then the aesthetics of the show as well, like nothing looks kind of like crisp and clean, like from the shuttles, and it almost looks kind of like very standard. It's almost like, you know, you're not having these big flashy spaceships come on, they're beat up, they're, you know, very boring generic colors, but like it works within kind of like the setting around them. And I just couldn't help but like looking at it at the first episode, particularly that I think it's the first 15-20 minutes when he's off world. It just looks so good. I think I compared it to Blade Runner because again it captures that gritty,
oh my god,
tone.
yes, no,
And
so that
yes.
I had been thinking that the whole time. Like, okay, when Star Wars is Star Warsing, it's more fantasy.
It goes
Andor is
the
hard,
top.
and Andor is hard sci-fi. Like Andor is very much butting up against that cyberpunk genre. And like the only thing we need to see are people with body mods, and then it's living in that cyberpunk area. That's a dystopian piece.
It's very strange, isn't it? Like it tries not to be Star Wars, but in trying not to be Star Wars, it feels very Star Wars.
Yeah,
it
makes Star Wars whole.
Yeah, exactly. It's not trying to go over the top, and it doesn't rely on these like this sense of nostalgia or like heavy Easter egg references. Like it just gets on with what it's trying to do.
Well, even really when
exactly, that's what I was going to point out, because like apart from all the spaceships and the tech and stuff, if you had told me this was a Star Wars show, I was just like, you sure about that? But I think again that works because it's telling a gritty, grounded spy drama that just happens to have all the big Star Wars stuff, and I think that works because again, most of these shows we'd see, you know, people with lightsabers and a dude in shiny metal armor, and now we're just seeing to see a guy whose superpower, as it were, is he's really good at spying and killing, and that's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think CJ too, like I know that you've talked a lot about I guess particularly with the Mandalorian and how it really leans into the Western and the samurai genres. Do you think that Star Wars is doing its best when it's leading hard into those other genres and kind of just lets the world be the place it's happening?
Absolutely, because the Mandalorian again is Western and samurai, and Visions was Star anime in the Star Wars universe, and now we have a spy drama in the Star Wars universe. So taking that genre and, you know, saying here's also the laser swords and talking sentient robots is the fun of Star Wars, because that's what George Lucas was doing. He was like, here's everything I love mixed into a pot, bam, new thing. And these shows are kind of coming close to that, and I really love that.
Yeah, and I think we're getting I was gonna say we're getting away from the fantasy space opera, and we're going into what is a different type of story that can be said.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna kind of say something that CJ had mentioned, just the fact that like Star Wars is the best when it's not relying on trying to copy what has come before it as far as Star Wars, and kind of leans into those other things that, you know, inspire it and what inspired George Lucas.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I know CJ, you mentioned this is a spy genre and as a spy genre thing. But I think the first 2 episodes, they do spy like espionage thriller in a very different way, or not a different way, but like in a similar way. So like instead of him already being embedded as a spy, he is also just a guy who does not want to be messed with by these people. And then he kind of like finds himself like going into larger networks, or already existing in one, but now having to opt into it to survive. And I think that that is something that is different. Because one of the things that I actually really appreciated, and this is what kind of made me think that we're going more of that, like you said, Blade Runner, cyberpunk, like hard sci-fi piece, is that as much as the empire, like the shadow of the empire is there, but the people that that are chasing him isn't the empire proper. It's a mega corporation that is making money and giving stuff to the empire, which is something we have not seen. Like we have not seen the, how do you say it, like the way that the empire impacts everything and how it impacts people who aren't already part of a bigger cause. Capital, it's funny having something come out from Disney be like a fairly scathing critique of capitalism as of right now, but
the irony is thick.
You just
So, CJ, you also mentioned the killing, which I think we have to talk about. One of the reasons Andor is more adult is that he kills and he doesn't feel bad about it. He just doesn't. At first, he's like, oh. And then at first, I'm like, oh, did he kill this guy? And is he feeling guilt immediately? And then you realize that he's just worried about getting caught. Like, it's not about guilt. It's about how do I make sure that I'm not tied back to this thing? And I think that I want to know how that landed for you all, because Rogue One, it's very clear that he kills because he has to, and it's a mission. There's no remorse in it. How do you all feel it's kind of framed in this way? Because there's no mission attached to it. It's some people mess with him, and he's like, no, it's not intentional at first, but the second one is.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say I loved it in a way, because like I hate how some things are framed towards like the good guys always have to feel guilt, and it's always on the good guys to do the honorable. Like, this is a person with no means to their name that's just trying to survive, and is, you know, gets caught in a bad situation, but you know, in the end, he's got to protect himself because he's got nothing else or no one else kind of protecting for it. He exists in a galaxy where everything is set up to literally go against him. So it was nice to see him kind of like the show kind of lean into that and give him the ability to just be like, screw those guys. Like, I've got to take care of me and look forward. And it doesn't detract from the fact that he's still doing a good thing. It's just showing like, hey, there are bad people in the world, and sometimes karma happens.
Yeah.
What about you, CJ?
And it's something new, because when I first saw Rogue One and Cassian kills his informant, I was like, oh, okay, well, go in there. And that kind of continues here. And it's like we haven't had these sort of morally conflicted protagonists in Star Wars before. Okay, well, we have, but most of the times it's, you know, they tend to either be like former Sith, like, you know, Ashes Ventress, or a bounty hunter like Boba Fett. Here we have just Cassian's a guy, and I love that. It's just a guy in the Star Wars universe, and that's part of the appeal of this. How does a guy struggle to fight, struggle living this, you know, oppressive empire, and also how he gets sucked up into the fight against the empire, and how that is, and we haven't seen that. So seeing that,
it almost harkens back to like a Han Solo with the original, when he shot first, like that morally gray character.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to what life is really like when you don't have anything to protect you from what's happening and the different forces that are coming in. Because I think that there are two things I want to get into, and I think one of the first ones that I really appreciated was kind of showing Kenari, his home planet, just going through what it's going through when it gets touched by an outside world. And I think for me, like, there's a lot of really great stuff happening in the flashbacks that really humanize Cassian, and also Breadcrumb. Oh, there's really something deeper. Like, he is the opposite of what he was when he was a child, and the opposite of what he was raised to be. How did he get there? And then I also think one of the interesting things is Canary is very heavily influenced by indigenous aesthetics. The language itself is heavily influenced by Spanish, which is really cool because it kind of, not that it needed justification, but it kind of justifies his accent in the Star Wars universe, which I really appreciate. But there's a lot going on that I hope the series gets to unpack. And we have, what, 12 episodes?
12. Yep.
12, yeah. And I think
12
that,
episodes and 2 seasons. So
yeah.
24 in total.
Oh, 2 seasons?
I didn't know that.
I did not know that. Okay, that makes me even more excited because like this is the thing that like we have all known about the Empire. They're a colonizing force. They are disrupting and destroying planets throughout the galaxy. That's why rebellion builds up against them so robustly, and many different rebellions. And we've seen that a little bit. And I think Clone Wars gets pretty close to showing like colonial impact. But I'm real like I hope they go in with Canary and seeing how that messes it up and how that impacts it. And that's what I can't speak intelligently, but like I'm really excited about those pieces because it feels like the world, like we're finally having to deal with all of the ramifications that aren't person with light sword. And or even like, because come on, like as much as Mandalorian, like I love Mandalorian, like I have a whole shelf of Yodito up top, but like it still has magic. Like Yodito is still a baby Yoda. He is like, don't at me. I know that's Yoda is the name and not a species, but like you still have the Force's presence. And with the Force's presence does come hope because the Force changes things that it touches. And so what I appreciate about Andor is like, oh, well, where's the hope? Where is it? It's not here right now.
I was going to say, this isn't like the outer reaches where like, you know, things have become lax. This feels very much like, you know, in the presence of the Empire. Like they're right there. It's the backyard. It's tough and it's a hard place.
Yeah.
And then
it's really great because Cassian is going to have to be the guy that says himself. You know, Luke Skywalker's not going to bust in. Obi-Wan isn't going to bust in. He's got to be his own salvation. And I think that's going to be a fun journey.
And in a way, like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, with like, without the flashy lights, without the magic or anything like that, it's people banding together and seeing how that happens. And I feel like that's got such a more inspirational spark. Yeah,
and I think what we're seeing now too is I think what we're understanding is, as much as I really hated Jyn Erso in the beginning of Rogue One, and I really love him like reading her the riot act, what we're seeing with him is that he also had to feel a greater call to do something. And I think that that's situating the differences that people are in when they see like something bad happening. And I know that like the same usual people like talk about politics in Star Wars, but like George Lucas wrote Star Wars as an analogy for the Vietnam War. So like it's always been there.
Kind of genetics.
Exactly. And I think what Andor has the ability to do is something that Rogue One did was you can be Bodhi and be a part of the Empire and realize that you need to not be. You can be Jyn, who is perfectly fine ignoring it because it doesn't affect her, and then realize that you can't do that anymore. Or you can be someone who's been in it for so long that you don't know how to do something that isn't following an order and fight. And I think that what Andor can do, we've only seen 4 episodes, but what it can do is it can set up the call and showcase that it's a journey of actually moving from inactive to active and standing up when like oppressive things are happening. And I think that that's something that's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm excited because again, from the 4 episodes that we've seen, the foundation that's laid and the path that's been set forward is just really intelligently done. Like it's got a very deliberate pace to it. I don't think
it's not ham-fisted either.
Yes.
It's not ham-fisted, which I appreciate because I'm tired of Marvel and Star Wars just like
it's so strange though because we've gotten such a slew of that that this just
Yeah.
feels so different. And I'm kind of blown away in a sense, because I'm like, I didn't expect this level of Star Wars because of what we've gotten.
Yeah.
It really threw me off. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to see, hey, if this is what you can do with this, hey, let's see more of that. Like I'm all for it. It's exciting.
Yes. It kind of reminds me of both House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Both of those are, set in these big, massive, popular franchises, but they take their time and you sink them into the world and you get to know these characters, and you're just like, you tune in week after week and you're just like, oh, I really love that. And yeah, I really feel like Andor is another series in that vein, and I really like that, and I really hope more people are looking up, taking notes, and thinking, okay, more of this, because it's really good.
Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that they tried to change the format, because for the most part, what we've gotten from Disney Plus has been 6 episodes or 30-minute 9 episodes. You know what I mean? So but it's very fits within a 6-hour-ish window, whereas this doesn't. And I'm like, thank you.
Well, and I think the other thing that I'm really excited for too is that I like shriveled up and died inside myself when Diego Luna said it was a 12-hour movie, because I think that making things like movies, so you can listen to our main podcast for our conversation on that, it doesn't allow a story to build on itself, and it can be really slow, and the pacing can be off, because if it's 3 acts spread over 12 episodes, I'm watching act 1 for 4. That is not how this feels. It feels like good TV. Yeah. Every episode has an ending that makes you want to check in for the next one. And every piece of that story is working coherently in itself. And I hate weekly releases. I hate them so much. I think it's a mistake that they're doing it with Rings of Power. But I think Cassian is doing what House of the Dragon is doing, where it is building you up over each episode, and I'm not mad about having to wait, because it makes sense. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I feel like I want more, but I don't feel that the episodes are empty. And I think that that is something that Disney Plus specifically has not given me.
There's a lot of series that have fell into that, we're gonna make this 10-hour movie trap, but then you do have those episodes where they're, like you said, they're just empty and they drag, and you're like, okay, it's trying to get you from A to B, but it does it in a really slow and incoherent way, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, guess I'll wait and see what happens next week. Where you're right, this doesn't. It's each episode has to stand by itself.
I feel like Andor is an episode is a series where somebody could watch an episode, and doesn't matter which one, and then be pulled in and want to start from the beginning to get up to where they are. And I think that is good TV. And that is not what Disney Plus has been bringing, to be honest.
Again, which is why I'm so surprised I want to watch for 4 episodes, because I was just not expecting this at all.
And as we kind of wind down, the other thing my last thing that I want to say is thank you, because the VFX is finally good. Which,
Stella.
I mean, the bar is very high for Star Wars properties, of course, but I'm so happy to see the beautiful marriage between practical and computer generated in a way that makes a world feel whole. And it wasn't just as I know She-Hulk gets the brunt of it. And again, you can listen to our main podcast for this, but
good plug.
There are a lot of shows that are heavily relying on CGI, like Rings of Power and Arondir versus the Warg. It is so bad looking. But we get to see these little hounds here, and they look real. They have cute little butts, and they look like real things. And I am excited to feel like I am being immersed in a real world again. And that is a magic that I am happy that we have. You don't need the Force to have that. So
I'm wondering if the delay in getting this done allowed them to refine some of those visuals, because they do look beautiful. But even the on-set, the costume designs and because when Cassian's on his home planet, and everything kind of looks stitched together, they're making do with what they have, and it's stunning. And then the droids, and awesome.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is, I believe, the first Star Wars series to be shot on location, because most of them have been shot in the volume, the digital stage.
Yeah.
So it feels tangible because they're actually there, and yes, the marriage between CGI and practical is really good. No fake Mark Hamills here. Good stuff.
So
I'm sorry, I love The Mandalorian, but that is creepy as hell.
As we kind of close out, I honestly don't have any notes for it. I think that I think it's perfect. And like, I know that I love Cassian, but it's not just him or why this is a perfect show right now. And I came in with reservations. They're all gone. This is perfect for me. I have no notes. Do you all have notes? Any final things you want to say? What it can improve on, or anything like that?
I was gonna say I don't think I have any particular notes where it can improve on, but I think if people are looking for like a bar to set, I think it would be that Andor is gonna do to Disney Plus like what Mandalorian did when Disney Plus first launched, where people expectations were like already a little low because of prior Star Wars films, and then just blew people away. I think Andor is going to do that same thing, where we had these prior Star Wars Disney Plus shows. This is just going to take it to another level, and I think people are really going to be taken aback by what they see.
Yeah.
My only two thoughts are, this is the first thing to come close to Star Wars Visions as like in my top series so far, and I hope season 2 gives us K2SO, because I want to see how he and Cassian met. Only two things. 100%. Good stuff so far.
Cool. So I guess that's a resounding, if we were to tell people to watch it, I guess we'd all tell them to watch it, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Andor is out tomorrow on Disney Plus. You all can watch it. You can find me at @OhMyMythRandy on Twitter and Instagram. Aaron, where can the people find you?
You can find me at British CPA on Twitter and Instagram, and you can always find me mulling about on the But Why Though Discord.
At discord.gg/BUTWHYTHO. And CJ?
You can find me on Twitter at CJ Writes Things. You can find my writing on But Why Though, as well as Collider and IGN. And I am one half of the Into the Spidercast podcast, where we talk all things Spider-Man, and we're coming back with a new episode tomorrow. So we'll come back from hiatus. Fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for watching. Make sure you do the like and subscribe thing. We're still new here on the YouTube, so it would be great if you liked this conversation. If you didn't like it, you still gave us a view, so thank you. That is it.